folks. Welcome back to the Quilter's Playcation Adventure Sewalong. It's September. I missed you over the summer. I did on the first Tuesday in August. I was in Egypt and I went, I would be doing this right now, but I wasn't. I was in Egypt on a lovely summer vacation trip with my family. It was amazing. So I'm happy to do that. But I'm really happy to be back here with you on the Quilter's Playcation Adventure Sewalong. This is month 7 of our treasure hunt, and I'm excited for this. I am doing today a compass. Every map has a spot on it where we know where north is, and that's what we're doing today. Because it is a treasure map and there is that maritime influence, it is a version of the Mariner's Compass, a simplified version. We are not doing the Mariner's Compass quilt block, which is a very cool, very interesting, very difficult quilt block, and this is improv and play and fun, so that's not what we're doing, but we are doing a version of that for our map. Now with this, the little legend compass, true north, that it shows on the map, they're not usually that big. So we're going to try to work a little bit smaller. I tried working small and I got smaller, but then of course the block itself is not that small. It's fine. I'm making a big quilt in the end, so we can play around with it. You can see here on the bottom, this is my abstract version that I have made. It's really very simple. I just have the dark pink with my points there. Really kind of simple. I may add a little bit more. It's feeling a little blank, so I may add some more to it, but that is the abstract version that I did. What I'm going to demonstrate for you on the video here is the more literal version. I'm putting literal in air quotes because it's really not that literal. We're still making a quilt block representation of it. We're doing improv, so it is not precise and measured along the way. Everything is not exactly the same, but that's the joy. That's the fun of doing all of this. So let's get into it. I just need to adjust things with my camera, you know, as always. So flip her around. But I actually, I need to do this. Bear with me. The tripod's the wrong way in all of this. There we go. Now I can lower you down onto the table so you can see what's going on. So I have pre-made quite a few of the components just for the sake of not watching me sew the whole time. So these are some of the components. I'm not going to show you them yet. I want to surprise us at the end with the block, but here's what you're going to need to make the block. We're going to need, whoops, pardon me, 2 fabrics. You could choose to skip this step where you have the 2 fabrics. I'm making it so the point has one color on one side, one on the other. So it's 2 colors, but you could have this be a single color and therefore no seam in the middle, just have one single fabric here, but I went with 2. It's just a straight seam across the back, nothing very fancy in terms of sewing. So you're going to need that, and then you're going to need something for the background. If you use a solid on the background, it will be a lot easier. You will save yourself some hassle, but otherwise I just recommend using an all over print. This is not the time to use a directional print by any means. This is just what I have left from doing the other bits. Don't use a directional print. You'll just make your life, it's doable. You're just going to make your life a little bit more difficult along the way. So use an all over print if you can. I've just chosen another beige because this is going to go on my map. And I'll place this block on the map where I have all my other, I'll just show you, right? all my other light colored blocks, right? Like my palm tree and my volcano, my path blocks like this. It's all going to coordinate with them. Maybe your compass is going to go in the water section. So in which case you might want the blue background or whatever color you use for the background for that. I'm going to put mine in the middle of all of my other blocks. And so that's why I've gone with this lighter background here. I'm just going to adjust that. There we go. So I've gone with that there. In all of that. So we're going to go ahead and do that and get the block sorted. So the first thing we're doing is we're making our points. This is our point. It's pretty straightforward. You can see this is what we started with. And then we have that there. Make one first before you commit to making all four. If you want to make a very simplified version of the block, you can make just what we're making here first, where you're going to make one point and then an end to show north. And you don't have to make anything else if you don't want to. It's entirely up to you. So I have my first one, and we're going to do that good old trick that we love where we layer our fabrics right sides up and then we cut. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that angle, right? Remove that little bit. And I want to give myself some wiggle room. I don't want to go right here on the edge. So I'm actually just going to kind of cut freehand up like that. And I'm going to sew that piece, those two pieces together. Hang on to what you cut off because you may use it. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to sew these two pieces. I cut right sides up, but I will sew right sides together. So I'm actually going to move you over a little bit so you can see cutting and sewing at the same time. Now, I didn't take this machine into the spa while I was away, but I feel like I should have. Because being off for a month didn't miraculously fix the tension issues I'm having, but it seems to be working okay. So we've got that one bit, and I'm going to press that. Always press as we go. Give it a nice good press. I am pressing towards my points, but you can choose to press towards the background. It's entirely up to you. So now I need to basically repeat the process on the other side. So I have the other pieces that I have left. I'm just going to go with this bit of a thicker piece here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to layer and I'm going to cut. Now, when I go to do this cut, like any other time, we have freedom in where we put the ruler, right? If you want to have that center seam be at the point, you kind of have to place the ruler imagining where it would be, right? If I cut here, then it's going to come in another 1/4 of an inch, right? So you kind of just got to play with it. I honestly didn't really worry about it. Mine are all very different, and I don't think it really matters one way or the other. Okay, so just layer it on. And I'm going to go ahead and cut. Just make sure that you have enough over here, right? I cut right to the edge of this piece, and I still have some wiggle room on that side. And that's what I'm going to cut. I'm just going to throw that over there and go ahead and sew those together. And that's the first step done. Pretty straightforward sewing, right? We created that seam in the middle. Then we have this, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to give that a good press so I can do the next step. Now you're going to do the next step before you try to trim anything else off. Okay, because things are going to shrink up a little, let's say, along the way. So the next thing I want to do is I actually want to add, see this little curve, right? Because I want my point to not be flat on the bottom. You can. Personal preference, if you want that, then go for it and have it flat. That's entirely up to you. But I want that little bit of an angle or curve there. So it kind of has that feeling of, here, I'll show you some of my initial sketches, right? This feeling where it looks like there's sort of like a circle in the middle as opposed to a plain square. So this is what we're doing. It's pretty straightforward. Just like any other time we've done curves, we're going to layer our fabrics right sides up, and we're going to cut that curve and sew it. So I'm going to cut, I'm not actually cutting a heck of a lot off of my blue and gray of my actual point, because I just want to maximize what I have there. And then I'm going to have these two pieces to sew together. Now it's improv, it's freehand. None of them are going to be the same if you're going to make all four, and that's totally fine, right? That's going to look great no matter what. So those were cut right sides together. I'm going to place them so that my point is on the bottom. I'm going to go to my machine. Sorry, that's folded over. I'm going to go to my machine. I'm only going to worry about lining up here, and then as I sew, I will move this over. I do not need to pin. As a reminder, we're just going to go and only worry about it an inch at a time and go through there. I will bring you a little bit closer so you can see what I mean as we go. Try to keep my hands out of the way. So we're in. Stop with your needle down if you can. And if you need to, you lift the presser foot a little bit, do a little adjustment. And I'm just going to guide this into place as I go. Lifting the presser foot if you need to, right? If you've got a knee lift, that works great. You don't want to pull, you don't want to stretch. Just guide it in. It will go. These gentle curves do not have a problem going. You do not need to clip any seams. Right, so we have that. I'm going to go ahead and press that. It will probably want to press to the bottom, which would be fine. I am going to force mine to press to the top. Just so that, again, from a design point of view, I'm kind of accentuating my little arrow point. Okay. So if you're going to do all four, right, to make a full compass, what I recommend doing is making all four first. And then you're going to measure them all and determine what size they're going to be. I did 3 before today. And so I've already determined, whoops, those are too low. You can't see them. I've already determined what size these are going to be. They ended up being 3.5 by 5.5. I just picked nice round numbers to make my life easier. And then I'm going to do this. The issue you've got is that you want to make sure you've made them all before you decide on a size. Is because what if a couple of them are a slightly different size, right? And then you've got to either... A lot of people will think, oh, I need to remake. You don't need to remake. You just might need to re-square up. So I had made these at 3.5 by 5.5, and thankfully I have enough here that is an easy squaring up to do. So I have kind of a clip in that one, but we're still okay at the 3.5 by 5.5. Press them well before you square up, and then hold your ruler nicely while you do that. So see, now I have 4 of these. I just want to show you, right? This is what we mean with the layout. And this is also why you want them to be squared up. at the same point, because now we need to fill in around here. But I know how big these squares need to be because I know how long this is. This is 5.5. So it means I need to make these squares 5.5. This side is 3.5. So my center square needs to be 3.5 inches square. So it will really depend on how big you make these are, whatever these could be. Maybe these are just 2.5 by 3.5. Well, then you're going to make your squares here, whatever side the long side is, or whatever length, sorry, the long side is. You'll go with what your pieces are. You don't have to make them exactly like I did. And there, the technique, the process, yes, the same. But the sizes will vary for everybody. Okay. Now, from a design point of view, here's what I wanted to do. I want to turn this into a little bit more of a compass look. So I've created a secondary block, which is just this quarter circle, right, to go around each side or each corner. So instead of a plain block, which you could absolutely do, I am doing these quarter circle blocks. So let me show you how to do that. Just want to move that up so I don't accidentally cut one of them. Here, I'll actually move that there and that there. So I have 2 squares of fabric. I have the background, and then I have what the arch is going to be. What size do you need? Well, every time, there's a good rule of thumb when you're cutting, sorry, I'm just pressing my background square here. A good rule of thumb when you're dealing with curves is that you're going to add 1 inch for every cut that you make. So we're making 2 cuts, and I want to square this up to 5.5 inches. So a good rule of thumb is that I want this background square to start at about 7.5 inches. Now I noticed when I was cutting mine, I ended up cutting off about 1 inch from the top. So I had a little bit more. So maybe 1.5 inches bigger than you think you need than this is. So if this is 4.5, maybe you cut a 6-inch block. I always err on the side of cutting bigger and then trimming off. Usually my trimmings, then you get trimmings like this, which are all very functional scraps. So I'm not upset about that at all. And then for the arc, I just kind of eyeballed a size about the same. And I cut all 4 blue ones the same. So they would be, they're, I think, roughly about a 4.5-inch square. I didn't get too fussy about whether it's exact or perfect or anything like that. And then we're going to layer those right sides up. We're doing curves, so it's right sides up. And then I'm just going to cut a quarter circle. And I tried to cut as close to corner as I could. There. This is a scrap. Put it over there. Do not discard this piece that you cut off from the background. We're going to use it again, okay? But now we want to go ahead and sew these together. Just like our previous curve, we are going to sew them with the concave on the bottom and the convex on top. And we're going to only worry about 1 inch at a time. Now, whenever I'm sewing these curves, I like to, because we haven't accounted for seam allowances here, we're going to start, about 1/2 inch in from here. Okay? And that's just going to help us cut the difference. Remember, stopping with the needle down, adjusting as we go. This is a larger curve, so I don't necessarily need to adjust my presser foot. As I go, I'm just going along there. Okay. Put my spider in. And I have that first curve. I'm going to give this a press. I'm pressing towards my curve, the blue. Again, just like when I was doing the other ones, it will want to go either way. I'm but it can go either way. So I'm just forcing the issue a little bit towards that center portion. Okay, I need to pull you out again. Okay, now we need to cut a second time to create this sort of arch effect. So I'm going to use the piece that I already cut off. Don't want to waste. And I'm going to line it up just more or less on top so you can't see the blue, but if some of it peeks out, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And then in my case, I'm going to cut, kind of come over about an inch and then cut. So that leaves this to sort of be 3/4 to 1/2 inch to 3/4. It's going to be different. The cut is, you're echoing, but don't worry about it not being exactly the same, right? So that's what I cut off. That's the only part of that background that we're not using at this point until we square it up. You have this piece. I'm doing another project that is using those blues, so I'm very happy with those scraps. And then we repeat again, sewing just along the way. Right, we just gently follow that curve the whole way around, adjusting as necessary. The bigger curves, you don't usually require a lot of adjustment. It kind of will do the work for you. Okay, so let me press that. Again, I'm pressing towards my blue in this case. That way my curve is really going to kind of pop. Make sure you have a nice hot iron. Steam can be very nice. You can also use, what I love for improv work is this flatter spray, just to give you that extra little boost in the pressing department. Okay. So once you have that pressed, you can square up. So I know I need 5.5 inch squares. So I get my ruler and I want to maximize how much of my arch I have and minimize this as opposed to going here and then only having a tiny bit of arch, but you can play around with where that goes. That's just my design decision to maximize the arch that I have. So you can see I needed 5.5 inch squares and I'm cutting off, you know, almost an inch. So I probably could have started with a smaller background square and it would have been fine, but I like to give myself wiggle room just in case they end up not being as big. So I'd cut those two fresh sides. Now I'll take those two sides. Now I'll take that fresh cut and cut my other ones. Okay. So there is my fourth corner. So you can really kind of see the block now. You can play around with, as I said, where you do these cuts. If I had kind of cut them here, it would be in closer. How much of a curve you do here, all of that's totally your design decision. But our block, we have one more component we need to do because what's missing? How are we going to know which one of these is north, right? We've got to add north into all of this. So I'm going to add another bit on the top here that will be an N. And it's going to fit right here. And then with more background on either side, pretty straightforward. And then we can assemble the block. Right now it would be assembled like a 9 patch, and then you can add that strip on top afterwards, or we can wait and just kind of put it together like a little mini quilt top. So I'm just going to move these up a little bit. Now here's the fun trick. Making an N is pretty straightforward. Okay, it is a diagonal line with lines on the side. Well, look at this. I cut off all of these pieces, right, when I was trimming. So that's what I'm using for my N. I might as well use the scraps, right? I have some of these diagonal pieces that I cut across, but I also had just kind of a long scrap. So I'm just going to cut, you know, a strip out of this, roughly about an inch. Well, not roughly, I am actually measuring this to be 1 inch on there. Now I have a choice, right? I can make my N this big. It's obviously going to shrink up a little bit, or I can make it and cut it shorter. These are the pieces I have, so I'm going with what it is, right? Make my life a little bit easier. So I have that strip, I have the diagonal, and I'm just going to sew them together and press. This is going to be one of those blocks that really looks like it could be very complex, but it's not. It's really straightforward sewing just in repetition, right? So you're going to want to press that first seam before you add the second one. So that's what I did, right? I wanted my end to be quite skinny, so hence the just using a 1 inch strip, because then I'll only end up with about a 1/2 inch. But I don't want it to like scream N. There, oh, my machine came unthreaded. This is one of the weird things it's doing. It just becomes unthreaded quite frequently. I really should have taken it to the spa. I took my other machine to the spa while I was away. I was having a lot of issues with the big fancy Bernina, and it needed a tune-up, but I think this old girl needs a tune-up as well. So I'll have to get her in there one of these days, but there we go. I'm going to start with a spider, especially because I've got little seams here, right? These are skinny little bits and seams. So I want to get in here and have a spider so I'm not worried about having a nest kind of build itself there. And a spider at the end. And I'm going to go ahead and press it again. And then we have the center part of the N. Okay, so there we go. So I can make my N that tall. I can shrink it down. I can basically cut, as long as I have the diagonal wherever I want. I've got freedom in doing this. So I'm going to start, I'm going to eyeball this. I'm going to start by cutting the top part off. And then see. Okay. There we go. I think I may make it 3.5 inches, so it's in proportion with this width. There. That's going to give me my height. Now, when we're making an N, one of the things that we need to pay attention to is when we add the sides, you want to have this little bit here actually connected to the blue. So for example, if I go ahead and put a blue, my other piece of the letter on the side, I'm just going to zoom in here, right? I don't want to have this gap of background here. I want to have it connect with this blue. So I'm actually going to shrink up this bit a little bit before I add the sides. It's a simple little thing. We're just trimming a little bit off so that we have that, bit in there. So I'm going to keep my height. And remember, it is going to go in a little bit more too because of seam allowances. But I really kind of want that to be in there. So in my case, I'm trimming it to 1.5 inches wide. And then once I add the bits on the side, I will be great. So I'm going to go ahead and actually cut this piece in proportion right away. So I'm going to cut a 1.5 inch strip. Of course, the scraps that I have are not scrap. Wait, there's another one. Are not going to be big enough. So I am just going to get the fabric itself from over here. And then I'm going to cut myself another one from this bit. So give myself some wiggle room, get that out of the way. And then I'm going to sew those two sides on. And then we just sew some, then we cut out the rest of the background and assemble the block. See, it really was a straightforward block today. A lot of components. You didn't need to see me sew every single component together. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit longer than the half an hour we'll be on together here. But for the most part, pretty good. You are pretty good. And remember, you can make these any size that you want them to be. I'm just going to go ahead and press with the iron now that I have my N. Oh yeah, see, it looks like a great N. Now I'm pressing towards the outsides, those pieces that I just put on. And there's my N. See? Really very straightforward. Okay, let's get rid of all this extra fabric for the time being. I will sort out my scraps afterwards and talk about block assembly. So we have a couple of choices here when it comes to assembling the block all together as it wants, because there's where my N is going to go, is at the top. So I have a choice. I can add around my N right here so that it is the same width as these, and then it will go together really kind of like a 12 patch, right? I'll have this column, and this column, and then my rows together. Or I can turn this just into a row equal, which is what I'm going to do because I don't feel the need to have an extra seam just to have that row. If you don't feel like doing the math, assemble this part first and then figure out how big these sides need to be, which you can do even without measuring. You can just, as long as you know the height, 3.5 inches, you can add your strips onto the sides and then cut them off at the same length there. So let's quickly assemble our block so we can see the finished block. And while I'm doing that, I'll let you watch me sew, but I will chat about my trip. It was amazing. If you haven't caught all of the updates or stayed up to date with me on Instagram, please do go there. I ended up doing a trip diary through quilt blocks while on the trip. So every day I made a quilt block that was inspired by what happened the day before. And they're kind of abstract. Some are a little bit more literal, but they're just a representation of what happened on the trip. And so that we have this amazing recollection, which is not, it's a quilty scrapbook, I guess, more than anything you could say. And it's just wonderful. I'm working on quilting it right now. And it's coming together just so wonderfully. And I'm really enjoying the process of remembering as I go. I really enjoyed the slowing down to make the block. I didn't always make one every day, but I would catch up if we had a little bit of a drive or a flight or something like that. A flight where they didn't take my scissors. So it was just a really, really good way to remember the trip. And it really was a trip of a lifetime for us. I don't know if we'll ever get to go back to that part of the world again. So having that memory is just fantastic. I will tell you this, I would highly recommend Turkey to anybody. We had an absolutely beautiful experience in Turkey. We were a week traveling through the Aegean countryside in different beaches, and relaxing there and exploring ruins, all sorts of things. And then we had a week in Istanbul where we were able to travel, and my daughter was competing too. So you can see we're coming together with this 9 patch. I'm just going to give them quick presses so that I can do those final rows together there. Yeah, we had a week in Istanbul, which I don't think was enough. That is a massive city with so much to see. I felt like I could have explored there for so much longer. We hit the big stuff, but could have done so much more along the way. And the Aegean coast was gorgeous. I would, if I were to ever have the opportunity to go back, I would love to explore some of the less touristy areas of it, some lesser known beaches maybe, because all the beaches were very busy. But beautiful waters, gorgeous people, friendly people, amazing food. Oh my gosh. Turkish food is so good, people. So, so good. I actually just went out for a Turkish breakfast this morning with a friend just before this. And it was fun to kind of jog my memories of that. Turkish breakfasts are a thing of beauty. So much variety of food, and you go, like, for those of us North Americans here, if you get a hotel that includes breakfast, chances are good you're gonna think this is a great hotel breakfast if it has the waffle maker, right? You're like, ooh, this is fancy, it has more than toast, you know, or it's got yogurt. Wow. Turkish, an included breakfast, that's a Turkish breakfast there, will have olives and tomatoes and cucumbers and fresh cheese and pastries of different sorts. That will kind of vary. You'll have fresh fruits, you'll have fresh bread with jams, coffee, tea. It's just incredible, and it's all fresh and included. So the pricing is just incredible. Now, going out for a Turkish breakfast here in Calgary, it's a little more expensive. Not gonna lie, but still worth it. It was lovely, and it's leisurely, right? Food is leisurely. Food is social there, which I just love. No rush, which was just lovely. Okay. Finishing up here. And then all we need to do is add on the north on the top. I love the way this block turned out. I really, really do. That's very fun. Okay. I am pressing towards the center, but you know, it really doesn't matter. You could press open. However you normally assemble a 9 patch, go with that, right? You'll notice, I'll show you this finished thing. Oh, I have one little tuck. I'll have to fix that afterwards. I got a little tuck. I didn't pin, so it can happen, but you can just adjust afterwards. But that's not a big deal. So there is the main block. I really like the way that came together. If I were to make it again, maybe I would have these curves be a little bit smaller, right? They're kind of coming to where the point of this is. Maybe I would have had it cutting in a little bit, but c'est la vie. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to sew background pieces onto this. And I'm not going to worry about sewing anything on top. And the reason for that is because I know that this overall block is going to sit within the rest of my blocks that all have beige backgrounds as well. I know that I don't need to frame out the top of that for it to be seen. Okay, it's not like this is going to go against a water block and I'm not going to be able to see the blue and everything. So I just need to add to the sides, which I'm not going to do right now. You'll get the idea. You would just basically, you know, cut a 3.5-inch strip, cut a 3.5-inch strip, because that's how tall my N is. So whatever height your N is, you're going to cut strips on the side, and then you're going to sew it across here. It's pretty straightforward. I will just cut some strips so you can see, but I won't take the time to sew. Let me get a rubber ruler. Now I ran out of this fabric that I used for the bulk of my block. I didn't have enough, so I started mixing it up. So I'll just continue on with that as I go here. It's not a big deal. Right, so I'm going to have one strip there, and then I'll grab, the other fabric that I was using, and cut a strip from that. And that'll be it. That's all I have to do. But I'll save us the sewing so that we can just see it. But if you have questions about this block, about the Adventure Sew Along, about my trip that I was talking about, right, that's what our finished block is going to look like. You can see that there. If you have questions about any of that, don't hesitate to drop a comment below, send me a message on Instagram, send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer things. Hi. So I'm just going to go here and talk about the abstract one that I did. So I made the points, same idea, right? I made the points. I just made 2 and had them in different directions. As I said, maybe I'll add all 4 directions. Here, I might add that yet. So we'll see. So that, folks, is month 7 of the Quilter's Playcation Adventure Sew Along for 2023. I'm really excited that you continue to sew along with me, to play with me. I'm having a great time with all of this. I get kind of excited. We watched Indiana Jones on the weekend, and it was just fun to have those sort of adventure, treasure hunting sort of inspirations. Egypt was the same thing. A little less so. It's not so much of a treasure map, unless you're an archaeologist, and then you don't have a map. You're just trying to figure it out along the way. But the tombs and the hieroglyphics and the art, like, some of it was just incredible, absolutely incredible. There was a joke among the kids, like, oh, we're going into another dead people's house. More dead people houses, more dead people houses. So we were having good laughs about that along the way. And that's what you have to do, right? With all of that. And the other thing that the trip, and really this kind of a project, is highlighting for me is the importance of curiosity in our lives. That without curiosity, we're not going to try new things. We're not going to move and push ourselves to try new things. So whether that is a big trip in a, to you, a foreign country, or a new experience, or a new to you kind of technique with your craft or your art, you need curiosity to push you to play. That's what you need. Without curiosity, you're not going to do anything. You're just going to go, okay, well, I guess that is what it is. You're going to stay home. Well, life is way more exciting when we don't stay home. Home is great. Don't get me wrong. We all love our beds in our homes, especially if you have a safe, comfortable home. But curiosity is what gets us out there and what gets us to try new things, have new adventures, to play. So the Quilter's Playcation Adventure Sew Along really is about curiosity and fun and being a little bit silly and exploring through our quilting. So thank you very much for joining me for month 7. We will be back in October, the first Tuesday in October, which I want to say I think is the 3rd of October. We'll be back then with yet another block. We're getting closer to the end, closer to finding our treasure at the end. So I'm excited to see where we go and to have you along for the adventure. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. Bye. Having trouble logging off today.